Well, hello, my friend. My name is Joe Bakhmutsky. I'm the founder of Power to Be Happy and also the author of Finding Hope in Times of Uncertainty, a guide to thriving in the challenging world of today. Listen, sometimes we all go through this time in our lives. I feel like I go through this every couple of months, where you kind of feel like you've lost your way, where you're not sure what's going on for you, whether you're heading in the right direction, and whether you're kind of staying on track, and whether what you're doing is right for you and for your way of life. So we feel a little bit lost and just kind of unsure of ourselves. And that is an interesting time, right? Because that's a time when you can maybe a little bit hard on yourself, and you maybe feeling like you're not sure like what is the next step, and you want to rediscover that sense of just excitement and looking forward to things and feeling good about yourself and kind of the world around you. And so I got really like three big ideas for how you can do that in your life to really reconnect with what's right for you now so that you can move forward on your terms. And that's the aim of what we're talking about today. And that's actually those three things add up to the word aim. That's going to be what they all stand for, because the first thing that I believe is absolutely critical when you feel like you kind of lost way with where you're going in life is to really accept where you're at in your life. And the reason I say that is so often in times, so often in life, we just kind of move on through things without really acknowledging where you're at, without acknowledging how far you've come, without really acknowledging the struggles and the challenges that you've had that might be really getting in your way, that might be stopping you, or that maybe have made things difficult for you. And that's what ends up happening is you end up being frustrated, and then you beat yourself up about doing something that maybe was outside of your control. Maybe these were circumstances. Whatever happened, it's vital. It is, I believe it is absolutely necessary to find a way to accept where you're at right now. This point in your life, what it means to you. What it means to you on just a deep and real and personal level. So how do you do that, right? Because we want to really like break that cycle of guilt and worry and frustration so that you can move forward. Well, I really believe that accepting where you're at in your life is all about accepting your past, accepting where you've come from, accepting where you've been, because that's what made you who you are at right now, so that you can accept the person you have always been and the person that you are today, but also in a weird way that will help to accept the person that you're going to become, right? Because we're all changing, right? We're all in this kind of constant process of transformation, right? And that's why we have this kind of life as a journey, right? Where you go through kind of different places in your life and you eventually find yourself somewhere. So how do you accept yourself today? How do you accept the past in a way that is serving you without kind of guilt or like just doubting yourself or tripping over yourself or looking on your past experience as something negative, right? Because we all have that, right? So I think it's important to really kind of hop backwards with your memories and really, I think it's so vital to go with just three simple memories, three simple events, and let's talk about them. And let's just kind of bring ourselves back, and I'm just gonna quickly guide you through them. We'll just literally take 2 minutes to do that. And the first thing I would like you to think of in your past is when you were a child. And maybe you were in school, and maybe you had experience where something didn't go your way. Maybe it had to do with your homework. Maybe it had to do something that happened in class. Maybe it's something like your teacher said to you, you know. Maybe something that just stands out for you. Something where things maybe you didn't know everything. Maybe like something just sprang out of the woodwork, and it that moment, what was it like? Do you remember when it happened? Yourself as a kid in school, perhaps it was in the classroom. How did it work out for you? Even if it's something that perhaps wasn't quite right, and something that maybe somewhat unpleasant, or but that you kind of went through and then you went on with your life. What was it like? I think it's important to remember those moments. You know, for me, I remember it's when I had to learn a poem off by heart. That was the thing when I was growing up back in Ukraine, that you had to like memorize a poem and then recite it in front of the class. I remember how difficult it was, and I didn't understand what is the point of that. Like, why? What is the point of me memorizing this thing? Well, I could just like read it out from a page. It really just didn't make sense to me. Like, it just didn't connect. And so I just distinctly remember that time when I was, you know, in my bedroom slash lounge room. I lived in this tiny apartment. I remember just like the light just shining through and me trying to memorize it. I would have been, I don't know what, maybe 8, 9 years old, something like that. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, why do I have to do this so hard? And then standing in front of a class and constantly just panicking about forgetting some lines, which I'm sure I've done. So that was an experience that I think back on, you know what? Despite all of that, and despite of really not knowing, I think that's okay. And with your memory as well, imagine you to try and think, well, it happened, and maybe it wasn't perfect, and maybe it really didn't go well, but it's okay. It's part of who you are, and it happened, and still it was just one part of your life, and you moved on with your life. So that's the first thing that we wanted to just the first stop on our memory hopping adventure, right? We've got 3, right? So this was remembering something from school, something that maybe didn't particularly go your way, but still turned out okay. You know. The second thing I'd like to ask you to remember is the first time that you can think of. Again, maybe you were young, maybe you were a teenager, maybe you were a kid, where you saw perhaps a friend of yours or someone from your family, and you saw them being upset. You saw them being upset. You saw them just being being upset. Something didn't go their way, and they felt like just emotional. They weren't in a great place, and you saw that time, but also you were there, and you couldn't really change it. And I remember that time distinctly with my mom. I remember that, you know, I remember she was being really upset after an argument that she's had, and it really threw her off. And I remember I looked at it, and I remember that was the first time when I felt, even though I was a child, I felt helpless. I felt like I can't say anything to make things better because I don't have the answers. And when I look back on it now, it's okay, you know? I mean, I don't think we have to have all the answers in our life all the time anyway. That's not how we're built. But it made me accept the reality that sometimes other people go through certain experiences in their life. And that I can't always change that. Sometimes I have to let it be or let it happen. So what was that like for you. I hope you had the chance to bring back, a time where you saw, maybe it was your best friend, maybe it was your parent, maybe it was your sibling, and they went through some kind of emotional situation. Maybe they weren't in a great place, and you saw them. Maybe you helped them, maybe you supported them, maybe you were just there for them. But I think it's the time where maybe you realize that you couldn't change it. At least, you couldn't change the situation. You could at least maybe comfort them or something. So whatever it was for you, I think it's important to remember that that a memory where there's another person that you care about in some way, and they were going through an emotional situation, and that you could perhaps change it. So that's the second thing that we can accept about ourselves and the world around us, is the reality that sometimes we can let the situations stay as they are. We don't have to like them, but sometimes that's how life is. And sometimes that's how we have to go through it and let other people experience things in their own way. Because that's what life is sometimes, right? Now, the third thing I would like you to remember is a time where you lost something. And I don't mean like metaphorically, like you feel you've lost your way, but then you feel like you lost something, like it was a thing that you lost. Maybe it was a time when you lost your keys. Maybe it was a time when you lost your phone. These are two that come up for me because I lost both. Not at the same time, but I've lost both my keys and my phone probably multiple times. But I guess if I was to think about it, is like for me when it happened, is I remember the time when I was out on a walk. There was a time in my life, but by the way, this time I'm still living my life. I used to take our second son for a walk each day in the morning. And we would go on this, especially when he was just in a pram, maybe he was sleeping, and we go on these like epic walks to give my wife a break because he was awful at sleeping at night. And I remember just this one time we stopped somewhere. I think I just sat down to have a drink of water, and I must have been looking at the phone or something, and I put it beside me, and we kind of walked off with the pram, and then when we got home, I think it hit me like, oh, where's the phone? It's gone. And I was really upset because like these days, right, like everything's on the phone, like you can't live without it. And we went on this whole search, and it was really dramatic because then I tried to track it down, and in the end of the day, the phone was gone, and ended up, I believe, getting a new one somehow, obviously because I have one. I can't really remember how it happened. Maybe I tried to block it out of my memory. But the reason why I'm saying that, the reason why I'm asking you to remember something that you perhaps lost in your life, an object, is that we all lose something in our lives. We all lose things. Sometimes things just go away from us. And that's, I think, a part of our lives. That's what we experience. And then that's okay too. Like we all go through it. We all lose things, and whether they're physical things, and sometimes people who are no longer part of our lives for a variety of reasons. Maybe you've went your separate ways, or whatever else circumstances have come in the way. So I really believe that bringing back some of those memories, one that might have had to do with you, where things didn't quite go your way, perhaps as a child, when you were trying to learn something or trying to figure something out, when it was about, seeing someone you care about being upset and not being really able to change that, and being kind of okay with that, not happy, but okay with that's how things are, and noticing that. And then also bringing back a situation where you lost something, but then you came to terms with it. I think those memories can help us to might help you to accept where you're at right now. And what I mean is where you're at right now in your life. How you feel about yourself, about things that maybe didn't turn out the way you wanted to. Because let's be honest, they often don't. I wish they did. And sometimes we don't have clear reasons why, and we don't have great explanations sometimes. Sometimes it's just how things have turned out, sometimes it's circumstances. I think it's important to set some of those worries or concerns or rationale aside and say, you know what? I am who I am, and this is where I am in my life right now. And I accept that. I take responsibility for it, but I also accept it. I accept that I'm not perfect, and I'm willing to live with that, and I'm willing to take a step forward on my terms. This is what our first, the A in AIM is to accept the way that you're at right now and be comfortable and be okay with that. The second thing we want to be able to do is that's the I in AIM, is to be able to integrate what's really important to you now into your experience and really be able to reconnect with what's real for you, what is meaningful for you. Because I think when we kind of feel that we lose our way a little bit, and maybe kind of go off the path that we want to be on, or we kind of feel that things haven't really been going well, and maybe you're not happy with the kind of progress or just how things are, I think it's important to just really reconnect with what's important to you and really bring that back, really integrate it back into your life, just something that you feel really good about. And to me, that is your values. To me, that is the values of what's important to you and what you stand for. And to me, for the longest time, I thought that values is something that is static, is something that doesn't change. It's kind of like, it's like written on the stone tablets, as if, and that's kind of what's in there for you, and that never changes. But you know what? The more I look at life, the more I feel that values are actually the choices that we consistently make about what is important to us right now. That's what I really believe that values are. They are choices that we deliberately and consistently make about what is important in your life right now. And that represents a sense of movement, right? Because we change, right? We've talked about it. We talked about the journey of life. I mean, that's something that a metaphor that's existed forever, right? That life is a journey. And if that's the journey and we go on this journey and we change, then it is only natural to accept and acknowledge and reintegrate your values, because they keep changing as well. So if values are the things that we change, if they are the choices that we make, then we could influence the choices we make. And the reason why I say choices is because sometimes what we want to have in our lives and what we will aspire to is quite different to what we actually end up doing. If I, for example, aspire to, for example, have a successful business, but in reality, I just, I sit on my couch and watch TV most of the time, then that ambition is really not going to come to life. And that just speaks to my personal values. That means that the value of, for example, having a successful business, then that is something that I would like to have. It would be nice, but it isn't my core value, because if it was, then I would be moving towards that. I would be spending my time consciously trying to kind of work towards that. And I think the same is true for most of our lives, whether if I want to be, if my value is to be, for example, a great father, then, how would I know that I'm living through this value is like, do I spend time with my kids? That would be one way to check in. Because if otherwise, if I feel that that's one of my core values, but I'm not actually doing that, then I'm not in line. And sometimes it's worth to examine our lives, to look at what's happening in your life right now and really kind of consider that. What do I think is important to me? Am I actually choosing consistently to go towards that? And the answer sometimes, maybe, no, I'm not. And it doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you someone who, is is not someone who is consistent or doesn't keep their word, or it doesn't make you anything bad or negative. It's just a reminder to maybe say, is this really important for me? And if it is one, if it really is, if I really do can consciously look at that, at whatever that is, whether that's that's something to do with your family, whether that's something to do with your health, whether that's something to do with your career, whatever way that means for you, it's worth to looking at that saying, well, what's important for me? And how can I do more things to align with that? If it's important for me to stay healthy, because that's one of the aspirations that I have, is to live a healthy life. Like my physical and mental health, well, am I really doing that? Am I being deliberate in being active and in eating the right foods, at least most of the time, right? And if I'm not, that maybe I can do better. Maybe there's something that can help me with that. And that's how we can kind of realign around that. And I think that's what's so important, is to think for yourself, maybe in those three areas, right? And what is really important for you in your life, in terms of your health, in terms of, people that you care about, and also just where you want to be in life. Something that will give you a sense of, you feel like you belong, something that has some kind of dreams or perhaps aspirations of how you would like to see yourself, or how you want to be out in the world. What would be like representative of you? What's important for you? And whether you're on track, not with the perspective of being hard on yourself, but simply from an angle of going, if this is important to me, if this is what's really important to me now, how can I do more of that? And when you can have a greater alignment of the things that you want in your mind, and then you do a great alignment in terms of how you actually spend time of this and effort towards making that happen, that's when you really make the choice. You make the deliberate choice, and you keep on making the choice, right, throughout your life. Making the choice, and when you're consistent about the choice, and about what is important to you in your life right now, then you are living through your values. And I think that is so incredibly important. Living through your values, it really is consistently making the choices about what's right for you in your life right now. Now, the third part of our aim to really move forward in life and on your terms, away from feeling lost or confused, is, well, that is being able to move on, right? We've talked about accepting where you're at in your life. We talked about being able to integrate and really, your values and what's real for you now, and really reconnect with that. But how do you move on? Well, I really believe that it comes down to, not having these, I know for the longest time in my life, I kind of had these maybe vague images of where I wanted to be, or of how I wanted to see myself out in the world. And maybe they were premonitions of a kind, and maybe they were kind of aspirations in a way. But what's changed for me, and what I believe, it's not only in terms of results, but also just in terms of living a purposeful life, what's made a tremendous difference is making promises to myself. I believe that making a promise to yourself, that is not a public promise, it's not a commitment in front of somebody else, but it's personal and real to you, that is going to make a big difference for you, my friend. That is, I think, an absolutely vital aspect of our lives moving forward. Because it is when you promise to yourself, that promise that you make, when you can say to yourself, you know what, I'm gonna write that book no matter what, and I'm gonna make it happen by the end of the year. You know what, I'm just gonna be a great parent, to the point where my child feels secure and safe and supported. That could be a real promise that I make to myself. Another promise could be, you know what, I'm gonna make a difference with supporting this organization in any way that I can, by volunteering and making a difference in a way that is true to me, because I care about their mission, and I'm gonna go out and do it. Or I'm gonna, I will promise I will do everything in my power to learn this skill so that I can just be great at what I'm doing and enjoy this time off that I have. I'm just gonna go and do it with excellence, so I feel like I really know what I'm doing. These are when you make a sort of promise to yourself, not out loud, not to somebody else, not so that somebody else can hold you accountable, but so that you yourself can hold yourself accountable. That is when I believe things truly change. That's when they go from the realm of aspirations, from kind of vague daydreams, into the actual reality. Because when you accept where you're at, where you can, integrate your values into your way of life, and you live through those values, then you go after your dreams, and you can really make promises to yourself to do your absolute best to make it happen. And when you promise that becomes real. So I would like to ask you to consider right now, are the 3 promises that you could make. You don't have to make it, it's your choice, obviously, But what are the 3 promises that you could make to yourself in these 3 areas? First of all, a promise to yourself about someone who needs you in your life right now. Maybe you could support them. Maybe you could be there for them. Maybe you could guide them. Whatever way that is, but someone in your life who perhaps looks up to you and needs you at your best the most. What would be the promise that you make to yourself about that person? The second thing, what would be the one promise that you would make about making a difference out in the world? And I don't mean some, change the world type situation. I mean a difference in a way that might be just tiny, might be something that nobody knows about, but you do. And it's a change in the world that you believe in, that is meaningful and significant to you and your way of life. And the third promise is, what is it going to do? What are you going to do to look after yourself? What is it that you're going to do to really take care of your body or your mind or something to do with yourself that you'd feel like you're really doing the right thing by yourself. I hope you can make those 3 promises to yourself. And please remember, my friend, that big dreams, they require big responsibilities. And who is better to make a promise to than yourself? Because that's the only promise that is worth keeping. My name is Joe Bakmotsky. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this has served you, and I'll see you soon.